Right, so I think let's get started then. So today we're looking at assignment 10, which is about wet collections. So this topic looked at the curation standards for wet collections. So that can be anything that's in a preservative. So it might be arthropods, it might be marine invertebrates, it might be different kinds of worms. It can be the soft tissues from mammals or birds, and even some herbaria have wet collections. Fish, another group. So there's lots of different kinds of wet collections, but the principles of caring for them are very similar. So when we did the webinar, we looked at what are the main risks to wet collections, and then what are the standards that we need to meet to protect the collections. And obviously the biggest risk is fire, because most of them are in ethanol, which is highly flammable, whether it's the liquid or the fumes that escape from it, the vapors. And then the other big risk is drying out. So if the bottles aren't good quality, or the lids aren't good quality, or the collection isn't regularly checked and there isn't regular topping up, then the specimens can dry out very quickly. And then the other risks associated with the plastic bottles, so leaching of chemicals, which might not be so obvious to see, but it happens. And then also if the ethanol is the wrong concentration, so it can become more and more dilute every time you add liquid to it, or it can become more and more concentrated. So you need to check the concentration and adjust where necessary. So those were the main risks. And the assignment, I'm going to share the assignment. So it wasn't an option, it was just the one option for this assignment, and it was really to do an assessment of a wet collection. So it doesn't look that difficult, but I think that once you start working on the template, you see that it may be a little bit difficult. So it's a comprehensive assessment of the current state of care for a wet collection. And the purpose is really to allow identification of what aspects need attention. So what do you need to do? And then also what consumables or equipment or infrastructure do you need? And if you were part of the last topic, the webinar number 14, which was about developing your curation or collection management plan, you'll see how this assessment feeds into developing that plan. So for this one, you don't have to develop the plan, but you have to identify all the needs. So, it's best to focus on a single well-defined collection. So just because it's more manageable for an assignment. And you really have to work with a wet collection. So if you don't have a wet collection, it's not really possible to do this assignment. And all that you need to do is to fill in that Excel spreadsheet. So there's a template that needs to be populated. And some of the points about the storage were in assignment 9 already. So if you did an assessment of the storage, what you've got and what you need for storage, then you can pull that across to this assignment. But there's more details in this assignment. So you need to actually check and try and complete all the blocks in the template. Even if you say uncertain or not applicable in A, just to show that you have worked through them, because otherwise if there's a whole lot of blank ones, we don't know whether they've been forgotten about or if there's no answer. So it's better to put something in there just to show that you have actually worked through it. Okay, so let's see how many people have done this assignment or tried to do it. So Andrea, has done it. Okay. Sanela Siwe's done it. Rendani's done it. Okay. All right, let's just go through it. I've sort of done it for a fake collection, just to work through it, and then we'll take any questions and then just see how people have found it. All right, so I think the challenge with this one is like assignment 9, is to try and get as many details as possible. So the template is available on the NSCF website, and it was circulated. You'll put in your collection name and your institution and what taxes in there, and then the number of specimens or specimen lots. So if it's an invertebrate collection, often you'll have one bottle, but you'll have 50 or 60 or 100 individuals. And so that we consider as a specimen lot. And it's all in one jar, and so it's managed like that. It's different if you work with vertebrates and you've got one bottle, but you've got 10 frogs in it, and each frog is from a different place with different locality data. Then you might need to separate them. And so it might be a little bit difficult there. You can make a note of that kind of thing. So where you've got like one big container and you've got lots of different individuals with different data in there, there's a risk, because if they all got a little label tied to them and those labels come off of them, then they're going to be mixed up and you're not going to know where they came from. Where is the collection stored? So what building, what room, and then your staffing. So you'll have seen from that when we talked about the curation collection management plan, it's very important to know how many staff there are, because then that allows you to plan better. So although you're not planning here, it's just good to have an indication of how many staff. I just made this up, and you can put how much, what percentage of their time they have for this particular collection. So if you manage a dry collection and a wet collection, and the dry collection is the bulk of the collection, you might only have 20% of your time to look after the wet collection. Or in some institutions, you have a collection manager who's responsible for 10 different collections. So they might only have 20% of their time, or 10%. So try and put what percentage of their time, if it's not somebody who that's all they look after, is that one collection. Okay, so then I think there are a lot of questions and a lot of items to work through. And the first lot is about the storage environment. So the temperature, humidity, fire suppression, fire doors, light switches. So this is the actual storeroom. And put in as much detail as you can, because it helps with planning. So like, for example, here I said for the temperature control, there's air conditioning units in the storeroom. They're set at 18 degrees. How many? There's 2, and they're Samsung split units, 12,000 BTU. If you're unsure, you can say unsure about the specifications of them. It might be that your air conditioners are part of a building system, so they're not individual for that particular storeroom. Then you can put that there. And then notes any challenges, special measures, or actions. So what's the story about these, if there is one? So I just made this up, but it might be something like this. You might not have servicing contracts for the units. Often they get problems, and repairs take about 6 weeks. I think that's a common problem. And during these times, the temperature is not well controlled. The air conditioners don't seem to be able to cool the storeroom effectively in summer. So what do you need to do? You obviously need a service contract, and maybe you need to replace the air cons. So that's the kind of story that you're going to tell. The humidity control in a wet collection is not a massive risk. So if you have no specific humidity control, it's not a massive risk apart from mold. If you get mold growing on everything, it can affect the seals on bottles. It just makes the place look quite dirty. It can be unhealthy. But if you don't have any mold, then it's probably not a big issue. So for this, I said there's no problems with mold or damp, but there's no humidity control. The fire suppression system, so think about, what do you have in that storeroom? Do you have a detector? Do you have automatic suppression? Or do you only have fire extinguishers in the corridor outside? Or do you have a fire extinguisher inside? But then it would be manual, not an automated suppression system. And then what does it use? Is it a water system? Is it a gas? And what kind of gas? Is it a dry chemical, a foam? How does it work? And then, what is it serviced regularly? Are there some other kind of checks? Have you ever had problems with it? So I know like some of these things can trigger with a false alarm and release, and then you've got to get the canisters or the cartridges refilled. So I've just said the system is good. It doesn't need anything additional, but you have to continue with that regular servicing. Fire doors, you have them. If you don't, then you probably need to look at fire doors, especially for a wet collection, a storeroom where wet collections are. The height of electrical plugs. So ideally, you shouldn't have electrical sockets in your wet storeroom just because of the vapor buildup. And if you do have them, they should be higher off the floor. And if you do have them, you might need to think about taking them out. So what needs to be done, I just said, that socket should be disabled or removed. So you shouldn't have microscopes and be working in that storeroom with anything. Shouldn't need light sources. So it might not be feasible, but just you need to reflect on it and think about it. And then the light switches outside the storeroom. So this is also just to prevent sparking. Often when you put the light on, there's a minute spark, but if you've had a vapor buildup, that one spark is enough to create an explosion. So if the light switch is not on the outside, then you might need to record it. I said mine was out. And then a ventilation system. So is there a system like an extraction system? So when you're topping up ethanol in that storeroom, you'll often get build up of vapors. It's a risk to you, but it's also a very big fire risk when you have that. And I don't know how much. So some containers might not be completely sealed, and then you'll get evaporation of the ethanol out of there, and you get a buildup of ethanol vapors. So the ideal is to have some kind of an extraction system. It might be manual. You have to switch it on to extract when you're working in there, or if there's any kind of buildup. And ideally, you should have some way of measuring that buildup. There are machines that can do it. I don't know what that costs, but it might be a matter of borrowing one just to see what levels you're reaching with your vapors. You should have a ventilation system. And then light prevention. So we did in the previous assignment look at windows, how many and whether they had blinds. So you're really just pulling that across. Okay, then the shelves and whether they have a barrier. So we did that in the storage assignment. But you can go back and check and see if there's any detail that can be added. And then, is there any overcrowding or any of the shelves bending from having heavy weight? And you can see here, I've put in the details. So how much shelving have you got? So if you need to install a barrier and someone says, well, you know, how much is it? You can tell them it's 60 meters of shelving. Sorry, 300 meters of barrier that's needed, and then you can do the costing for it. But you need to tell whoever manages the budget and the procurement and installing this, how much is involved. And then when you look at the overcrowding, are there any jars piled up on each other, or like just so tightly packed that you can't get to any of them? About how many of them are like that? It may just be like one section of the collection. And in this end, you know, so what's needed in this to meet the standard? So the standard is that you shouldn't have to move any bottles to reach the ones at the back. There should be enough sort of space that you can reach and get them out without unpacking and moving a whole lot and trying to find something at the back. So how far away from that are you? What would you need to do to reach that standard? You know, how many bottles would you need to move? So that's the organization. Then the storage containers. So also in assignment 9, we would have looked at this. So the glass jars, what sizes are they? Have you got the polypropylene screw-on lids? Do you have any polytops? What is the stopper made of? So do you put your polytops into a bigger bottle, which is the right thing to do, but then what's the stopper in all of those polytops? And then do you have any plastic? How many bottles? So how many glass jars do you have? How many plastic? How many need to be replaced? And are there any problems? So I mean, for the collection I work with, I use a lot of polytop files, and I realized like probably 1 in every 500, the bottom falls out eventually. I think it just deteriorates from being in ethanol the whole time. And there's nothing you can do to prevent that. It's not good quality glass, but you need to maybe just check. So that's the kind of detail. Everything needs to be checked. Your lids, what kind of lids are they? There should be that polypropylene screw-on lids. Do you have any standard plastic lids that are not polypropylene? How many do you have problems with them? So I know that standard plastic lids often crack around the edges and sort of pop up. And then those jars dry out very quickly. So what's needed, you know, so you have to decide how many do we need to buy? Can we get them? What are we going to do in the interim? So maybe you have to increase your monthly checks on if you've got only plastic lids and you know that there's a problem. Okay, have you ever had any major rebottling program? When was it? And then you can see, yeah, quantities. I mean, you could say we rebottled 7,000 specimens. Any challenges, special measures or actions? You could say it took 3 months to do it, and all our staff and extra staff to make any notes about it. Okay, then for the preservative, so this is not in the assignment 9, so this is new information that you're going to have here about the preservative. So the type, so what do you store your collection in? If it's some are in ethanol, some are in formalin, what is the number or the percentage? Are there any issues? So I know some institutions have problems with procurement. Some institutions have problems with storage of ethanol, so you can't store more than 50 liters of ethanol in your building. If it's more than that, it has to be away in a special storeroom away from your building, and not everyone has those facilities. And so that creates a problem. You can't buy quickly, but you also can't store a lot. So think about what are the challenges that you face with your preservative. Then to check the level of preservative in the bottles. So what is the current state? You can just do a quick, well, if you've got a very big collection, it might not be so quick, but have a look. So remember, the standard is that it's 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter from the top of the bottle. So it's not full to the very top. It should be 1 centimeter below that. How much of that collection is right? Maybe some is too, some of the jars are too full. Maybe some of them are only half full. So try and get an estimate of what is the current state. And under the notes, yeah, so any challenges or special measures or actions, you might want to add, what is the problem with it? Maybe you haven't done a check in a long time. Maybe you don't have ethanol to do topping up. What is the problem? And what is needed? So what would you need? It might be that 50% of the collection is below the level, and so you need to go back and do topping up of at least 50%. Yeah, so how much of the collection is critically low, so less than a third? So is there anything that's really close to being a crisis? About how much of the collection is a third or less full with preservative? And then how many or what percentage of the containers have dried out? So do you have any dried out specimens, and how many or what percentage? And it may be, you know, that you came in and you took over from somebody else and the collection was in that state when you found it, when you started there, and you don't know how long they've been dried for, and you don't know if you can salvage them. Maybe you can't. Okay, then quite an important one that we often neglect is about how many specimens, what is the proportion of specimens to jar size. So you often see, and I often get material where the bottle is just crammed full of specimens, almost to the very top, and there's only a little bit of preservative fluid and lots of animal. So the standard is 3 to 7, a ratio of 3 to 7. So think about if that bottle, let's make it 10, do the specimens only take up 30% and the fluid take up 70%? That's the way it should be, but it often isn't. So how many or what percentage of containers exceed this ratio? So that have too many specimens in them compared to the size of the container. You'll have to look at that and think about, like, what is the size of the bottles? So if you had to address that, if you had to fix it, you can either put them into a bigger bottle, or if there's many different specimens in one bottle, could you split them, put them into other bottles? So don't just think about how many are overcrowded. What would be needed to fix that situation, to meet the standard? And then the other thing is discoloration, or fat deposits or other deposits. So some animals, they don't seem to create problems, but some definitely do, and you can see the ethanol is very discolored, or it's got like yellowish, orange, sort of fatty deposits in it. If it's just a bit discolored, it's usually not a problem. But once it starts to leach out fat, too much fat, or with my millipedes that I work on, it seems to leach out like a crystal, it's probably a calcium deposit. And that starts to coat the whole specimen eventually. So look at if you see anything that's really discolored and how many are like that, or has like thick crystals or other like fat. You can see fat globules in there. How many are like that? And is there any challenge to fixing it? Okay, then we asked about the preservative concentration. So what is the current, what concentration are you supposed to have? So most collections, it's between 70 and 80% ethanol. I don't know if you use formalin, it might be might be 30% or 40%. I don't know about propanol. Is it the whole collection like that? Or do you have tissue samples that are in 100% ethanol? So that you know what you're supposed to have, but do you know what it actually is? So do you measure concentration? Check. And for that, you need a density meter. I don't think that there's other tools to measure, but you can also monitor. So those Alcamon tablets that we showed, I think a lot of institutions have got now, where you put the orange and the red tablet into a bottle, into your jar, and then when it reaches, I think it's 60%, the orange one pops up, and when it gets below 50%, the red one pops up. So at least you can tell when the concentration is getting low and when it's critically low. That's the concentration, but it doesn't tell you exactly what the concentration is. So have you used those Alcamons? And if you haven't, about how many would you need to meet that standard? And yeah, if you've got a density meter, a way of measuring concentration, then how often do you monitor? Do you record the results? When last did you do that? And then the labeling. So yeah, you've got to, and this is difficult for wet collection, especially one that's quite old, big, and what materials have been used for labeling has changed over the years. I know in a lot of collections that the old things, the labels were just on ordinary paper, they were written in pencil. Then it might have been printed with a dot matrix printer. Then it might have been printed with an ordinary laser printer, then later with a thermal or heat printer. And to know what's been used and when it changed and how much of the collection has all these different kinds of labels may be challenging. Maybe you've relabeled your whole collection so you know this is the label that we've got now. But you can just estimate. So how much, of different material used for the labels, and then what kind of printing materials, a pencil or Indian ink, handwritten, or some kind of a printer, and you know what kind of printer or ink was used. And write whatever you can here in the notes column. And your needs, it might be that your whole collection needs to be relabeled using proper quality material like goatskin parchment and special ink that won't fade or dilute. And then you've got to look at the state of your paper. So have you done anything to check the paper, the print? When did you last check? What is the current state? And then the monitoring program. So do you have a monitoring program for preservative levels? Yes or no? And the notes. So what is your monitoring program? Do you have one for preservative concentration? No, I've said no, it needs to be introduced, and it would probably be an annual check. Container condition labels, temperature. So do you have temperature loggers, data loggers for temperature? Do you download the data? Do you keep it? Do you keep records? So what do you need? So there's a space for notes. And then the fire suppression system. This is usually under the control of a service provider or your building management people. But if you're the collection manager or a technician in the collection, you should at least know that it is happening, and don't just hope that somebody's taking care of it, just because it's so important. Okay, and then the next lot was about documents. So the SOPs, so standard operating procedures and standards documents. So just ask, these are the ones that you should have. SOPs for how to top up ethanol, how to correct the concentration, rebottling of specimens. So what is your SOP for changing bottle? It might sound simple, but it's not always, it is a risk. So even if it's like half a page, that SOP. Monitoring of ethanol preservative levels and concentration and recording results, production of labels and relabeling process. So very important to have a SOP for producing labels and for relabeling. And then disposal of waste preservatives. What happens with them? Do you have a SOP? Or do you just pour it down the drain? And if you have other SOPs, so these are the step-by-step procedure document. And then your standards document, there should be one for the environment, one for the infrastructure and containers, one for labeling material, and for preservatives. So remember with the ethanol, we said there were different grades of ethanol and not all of them were appropriate. So you need to set the standard for that preservative. What grade must it be? And that's it. So all you have to do is complete that template. But you can see that there's a lot of work involved in getting all of this together. It will be less work if everything is perfect. It will be more work if you need to count lots of things and document lots of problems and lots of needs. But it's a very important exercise to do because it's part of caring for the collection. So if you don't know what the current state is, it's going to be very hard to upgrade it. Okay, questions, Sanela Siwe?
Greetings, Michelle, and everyone on the call. Could you please go back to the monitoring program part, line 52 downwards? Were you using
the monitoring program for? I remember where it is. Monitoring program.
Yeah, I know you said you were using a fictional a fictional collection, but were you using the manual standards?
No.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, that's a good point. So you should really check what the manual says in terms of monitoring. So you can do things more frequently than the standard, but you shouldn't do them less frequently. You know? So and you might need to say, we currently do it this often, but we need to increase to however often to meet the standards.
Okay. Okay. I looked at your, okay, but you've answered it in that I looked at yours and I was like, that's a bit lax. And but it's because I've been advised to do it a little bit more often, and I noted in ours that I know that I didn't necessarily include it here, like on this part, but so on this part we just referred that this policy would, you know, have something to say about that, like container condition, labels, temperature, and so forth, like which policy a person would need to check. But I know that in my own personal stuff, because I'm the one who's going to be responsible for the wet collection, I do have it written that you should be checking maybe this many times in a year. And so my alarm bells were ringing quite loudly when I saw you saying you checking preservative concentration only once in a year, for example. And I was like, okay. But if you say that you were not necessarily following the manual, then it's fine.
Yeah. So, you know, also like the preservative levels, I think are important to check frequently. So I said every 3 months. That's what the manual said. But preservative concentration is not going to change very quickly unless having a lot of loss of a lot of evaporation from your bottles. So measuring the concentration can be very time consuming, especially if it's a big collection. So you wouldn't you wouldn't actually check the whole collection every 3 months for concentration. What you would do is, if you had to top up a bottle quite a lot, so if you had to put in more than 30% of its volume, if you had to replace it, then you might check that bottle. But if everything is stable, there's no discoloration, there's no evaporation, nothing has changed, then you don't need to do it that frequently, for the whole collection. So, I mean, that's part of your SOPs, is to have that kind of information in your SOPs to make it very clear when, because you don't want to do things unnecessarily. So yeah, so it's about also like what makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Let me stop sharing there. Anybody else have questions about this assignment? So let's see from the people who have done it. Andrea, how did you find it?
It was really easy filling in a template, just following all the blocks. But there are quite a lot of things missing from our collection. I mean, our fire suppression system cost a lot of money, and then when another company came to check it, they pointed out many mistakes. So our suppression system is not up and running, and we've got 3 doors that go into our collection room, and none of them are fireproof. I don't know how we're going to get them to be fireproof. Our shelving, and then also some of the things on our paper, I can add more details. For instance, the percentage that Kirsten and I spend in the collection, her as curator and me manager. That's not in, and then details the lengths of the shelves and things like that. But other than that, I think our form is pretty much complete. We just don't have any of the SOPs up. We know what to do, we just haven't done them yet. But that is mentioned on this template. But we didn't have a problem filling in our this assignment number 10.
All right, thanks, Andrea. All right, so I'm glad that it wasn't. And did you count bottles, the number of bottles?
Yeah, we counted all our bottles. So that was pretty much complete. And how many are in glass bottles, how many in plastic bottles? We are in the process of replacing the lids with those plastic polyurethane lids. And there are still some with metal lids. And we've got few in plastic bottles still. But yeah, the quantities are there, the sizes are there. And most of them are, the ratio is 1:3. We didn't do the 7:3 ratio, we got a 1:3.
Yeah. And that's probably enough. So that collection is that the Holman?
Yes.
The Holman.
Yeah.
So worms.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's all. 3 to 7 is sometimes quite a hard ratio to visualize, and then 1 to 3 is probably good enough. It might be easier if you're doing a quick kind of assessment and you're just looking at things. Say, is it a third? About a third of the container size.
Yeah.
All right, great. And yeah, I think that lots of collections are going to have lots of things that don't meet the standard. And then when you do your curation plan overall, you can prioritize. So which are the most critically urgent things to do, and work from there. And it might be a 5-year plan to get all of those things addressed. And yeah, I mean, it's just bad when you depend on like a service provider to install the right kind of fire suppression and then they don't do it properly. But I think that's also something we face. With the fire doors, I think you can get a fire retardant paint. So at least it doesn't, the door won't burn. So that might be something to look into. Or a sealant that they put onto the door. It just means that it won't burn. And it won't allow fire to spread in or out. Okay, let's hear from someone else, from Jermaine. Have you started working on it?
Hi, Michelle. I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna skip this one. Sorry. Because I mostly work with dry specimens, so I would rather give what I know than go and because now I don't really have everybody working with me throughout everything. So I just have to go back to everybody and ask this and that. So just to save up time, I think I should stick to like the information that is there for now. And then also if I need more, I can go to someone else and ask. But for now, I keep to assignments that, you know, I know that I can get the information and I don't really need to dig too much on it, just to save up time as well for other people as well.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, the next assignment, 11, caring for dryer collections, it's very similar. It's just the details because the risks are different.
Yes, I'm doing that one.
Yeah, good. Okay, let's hear from the SIAP people. So either Mzwai or Sipamandla. So you've got a massive, massive wet collection. Have you done it? Have you done this assignment? So Rendani doesn't have microphone. Okay, she says it was easy. All right, good, good. I don't know if Sipamandla's got microphone either. He didn't have this morning. So do you have a microphone? No. Okay, let's hear from Mashlodi from Ditsam. Let's hear if you've started.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, everybody. I wouldn't say that I have started with the assignment yet because with my word collection, I just started working in the collection itself because we found it was often for quite a very long time. So we still have to count the number of containers in there and then see how bad and what is damaged, what can be saved and everything. So once we've figured that out, I think it's going to be easy for me to just jot down everything into the template when I'm doing the assignment. So I haven't gotten to doing the assignment yet because I'm still figuring out, the whole collection itself. Like some of the containers are broken. So we're figuring out how many containers we're gonna need. There's some containers that are on the floor, so we're going to need shelves. So once that is figured out, so once I get to doing the assignment itself, it's going to be easy for me to just jot down, put in everything that I did when I was doing the assessment. So
So, I mean, doing the assignment is doing that work at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Knowing how many contacts are broken. That's part of the assignment, you know, how much shelving. It's one and the same thing. So you actually, while you're doing your work, you're gathering data for the assignment.
Information for the assignment, yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so I think doing this assignment will help you with your collection.
It is very much. It is going to help me. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any last chance for collections? Anybody else have any, for questions? Anybody else want to contribute anything, or you're happy with it? Yeah, it seems like it. So tomorrow morning, we've got the caring for dryer collections. So that would be skins and skulls and skeletons and insects and fossils. So probably won't be the same people, largely won't be the same people. Charmaine might be there, but the rest of you, I assume, are not doing the dry collection as well. Okay, so if there's nothing else, thanks very much for coming to the tutorial, and we'll be having them through the week. So I hope you'll join us for others. Thanks, Fulu, for reminding us very often about the tutorial, and Nick and Chanel for helping organize. So thanks everybody, and we will see some of you later in the week as well. All right, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.